You should update your documentation too, by the way.
Okay. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Wolfram language design review, part of our language completeness and consistency series. Hold on, let me just do what I was told to do. Update documentation here. All right. Labeled graphics box.
Okay, so the issue here is I was asked to make plot label better to support like labeled style placement. And I'm not really here to talk about the top level details of that. That will be with Brett, and Brett's not here today. He's out today. But I am working on what the implementation looks like. And so, I mean, the basic problem is a plot label is awful. It causes all kinds of problems, and adding a dozen new ways to do plot label is not something I want to do. And so we're trying to solve the problem by different means. And so essentially what we're looking at is creating a new box, which I'm provisionally calling LabeledGraphicsBox. And it is a thing that takes in its, and there is documentation if you want to open up the documentation for it.
Well, I wasn't told there was. Maybe it didn't exist when we last spoke, John, but if I'd known, I would have included the link.
So yeah, basically the idea is that this is a thing that wraps a graphics or a graphics 3D and applies labels to it in a way that is more flexible, but it has the rubber banding behavior, the graphic style selection around the whole of the label.
Let me tell you the thing that I'm really concerned about. Okay, so let me show you an example.
Sure.
By the way, is this showing me the new when I can type through thing here or not?
No.
Okay. Because I wasn't happy with what I was seeing here. Okay. See that? Those labels are cut off.
Yeah.
And I think
let's solve that.
Yes. Yes. So this is well, I mean, there's a more significant discussion of how this interacts with graphics grid, which once again Brett's not here, and I haven't really reviewed this deeply with Brett. But the general issue is that this is a thing that understands how big its label is and can react accordingly.
Yeah,
it understands how big its label is. It understands what it can do with resizing the graphic. It has certain rules for kind of resizing the graphic to fit the label, or to crop the label if the graphic is the thing that's kind of controlling the size.
This sounds very good. Look, I mean, the other problem is this is leaving too much space. You see what I'm saying? Because it's worried about the label and so on. See this case here? This is garbage.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, why don't you can take this case and just use it as a test? Because I mean, if this doesn't work, I don't know why it's leaving all this empty space, but it's wrong. Do you agree it's wrong?
Yes. But there's a lot about the implementation of graphics grid that I can't speak to.
I understand that, but the bottom line is we got to fix this. Right? I mean, it's leaving too much space. And the thing that you're talking about, which I hadn't really thought about that as a possibility, seems like exactly the right kind of construct to fix this.
Yeah. Yeah. So
go ahead.
So the initial implementation of this would be looking at placements that basically follow labeled, the bottom left, top right, et cetera, et cetera.
Doesn't labeled have an absolute relative, 0.7 and things?
Not that I've seen in the documentation. Maybe it has in certain contexts, not as a standalone construct that I've seen. But we're anticipating that you might want to do something like that. You might want to have a label that maybe even partially overlaps with the graphic. And this construct is built to be able to absorb that sort of flexibility in the future. But in terms of what we might want to deliver in the next release, we have to keep our mission, doable in that time frame.
All right. Look, if you can solve this problem, that's already highly useful.
Okay. So, and I've written up some provisional documentation. You may not really care. It to a certain extent is kind of an implementational detail that you may not care deeply about designing. But I wanted to make sure we didn't get too far.
Yeah, I mean, the only question that I have is this label, pause mechanism here, which is the typical thing that we've done in low-level functions. And the higher-level things, we've tended to use rules and things like that more. But I think this is a low-level function. This is probably what we should use here.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
So
should we go on?
Sure. Yeah. Okay, and I've updated documentation for this, but I copied the documentation here, so you can.
What is
this? So this is parent cell and parent box, which right now just take one argument, and so parent cell of evaluation cell, which I think in this case,
by the way,
probably
my input is dragging here. Something is, I mean, this is a prototype build, so who knows what's going on.
Yeah. So in this case, returns failed because the evaluation cell didn't have a parent. But this is.
What would it mean to have a parent? So I mean,
inline cells have parents.
Okay, so if I do the same thing, God, this is dragging. This is not typing properly.
I don't know.
Well, I'm telling you that, so I'm just.
I mean, you could just do, dynamic of expression cell.
No, I'm doing this. Why did that? So now if I do command return here.
Yeah.
Okay.
And notice it's not the inline cell that it returned, it's the text cell that was the parents. So yeah.
Why is it in this font?
Because that is what inline cells and text cells do.
Right.
Okay.
They match the text font. They don't have
fine.
the font.
Fine. Okay, so what should we be paying attention to here?
Okay. So the single argument form was there before. I'm proposing adding second arguments of to these functions of the forms noted.
I have no opinion. What do you want this for?
So basically, well, I mean, basically it's whenever you have, usually a user interface that's doing some kind of, self-modification or introspection on the things that contain it.
Okay, you're introducing this because you needed it for something. What was the thing you needed it for?
Lou?
Sorry,
we have other solutions for the things that we needed this for. This is the cleaner solution. So for instance, in control equal, there is a button that lets you replace the control equal interface with the parse.
Yes.
And so we need a way from that button to uniquely determine the box object of the interface as a whole. I mean, we have other solutions for this currently. We use something that we call box IDs. But the parent box, particularly the fourth line item in John's display here, the type, N, would let us, run directly to the container that we care about.
Okay. Great. If this solves that problem for you, the design looks fine to me.
Okay.
I agree.
Okay. Style key mapping. So this, I started, we've had this for a long time, but we didn't have any documentation. And so I wrote up some documentation because we want to extend it. And this was related to the equal bracket thing that we discussed in user assistance, where if you type in an equal, you get a Wolfram Alpha short cell. And then what you proposed is if you type in a bracket, it flips back to an input cell, but an input cell populated with the text equal bracket, which is not something that style key mapping can do right now. So to remind you, style key mapping is the thing that, is, when you type in the initial equal, it gives you the Wolfram Alpha short. If when you type in the initial star, it gives you an item cell, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes.
And so basically what I'm proposing is a style key mapping can take a full cell right-hand side.
What could it take before?
Just a style name. And then it would create an empty cell of that style.
Seems like a no-brainer.
Okay. And then the other thing I noticed was a bit of inconsistency in terms of that style key mapping was using this thing called key event. But there are other places that use a thing called menu key to be able to specify things with keyboard shortcuts with modifiers, like with the shift key or with the control key or something. And I thought maybe we should standardize
the key event, which is the one for.
Yeah. So if you're okay, we haven't really kind of documented any real way of doing this, but I'm happy to just standardize on key event and start deploying that everywhere.
Sounds fine to me. The only thing is you've got to continue supporting many key because there'll be legacy style sheets.
Oh, sure. Yes. We don't have to document it, but yes, it still has to work. I agree.
Sounds fine to me. Tell me how, this isn't perhaps relevant here, but percent monetization, is that going to need language support? I bet it is.
By language, I'm not sure what you mean by that.
Wolfram language level function, new functions. Like, for example, %13 is equivalent to, or percent 13 times is equivalent to out of -13.
Right.
Right. What we're going to want is something that is the equivalent of out of, it's not really out, it's really, notebook previous cell, such and such, but maybe we just have that. Maybe that's
well, and you had suggested some sort of previous cell sort of thing, which is on my list of things to bring to this meeting, but it's not in today's meeting. It's because I think it needed to be a bit better designed than just previous cell bracket. You need some way to be more specific.
Wait, before you go on, right, so I raised a question which I want an answer to, and and also,
what does undo do? That's the question.
I would expect undo to undo the effect of typing in, or of typing the key, whatever the effect was.
okay.
So just unpeels. So equals unpeels down to equals, unpeels to nothing.
Yeah, if it doesn't work now, that's just a bug. It should be fixed.
Okay, and
equals. Okay, now I press undo, Command Z.
Okay, so that's just a bug.
And that's interesting because when I tested it with, well, I think I did it with star. But I think Command Z actually undid the whole thing.
It beeps again, just beeps.
Huh. Interesting. So
unless it's always beeping at me, I don't know.
Yeah, or it's a prototype build issue. Right.
No, it works for just regular text.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised that this might be a hole in undo, and I don't think it's very difficult to plug.
Right.
And I don't think there's anything deep here.
Right. Yeah, I'm just pointing out that like with with equal or with greater than for natural language cells, you can sort of, you can just hit back or go through another couple of equals and get back to where you started. But if we're going to replace it with a non-empty cell, then you're not going to get back to where you started, because style key mapping only affects an empty cell. So it's going to be a somewhat different user experience.
I don't understand. What are you saying? I mean, you've got
okay, so type in, in between cell insertions, type in greater. Okay. Now
there's a bug there. Should show the type of language it's expecting. Go ahead.
All right. So now if you
I type 2 + 2, and then now for some reason the Python appeared, and now I do Command Z, and now I'm beeping. And you're saying that's wrong. I should be able to back out of this greater than sign.
Well, I'm saying you could have backed out of it even earlier, like if you had.
Yeah.
So
there's a bug here. It's not doing undo.
Stephen, let me finish. You're not understanding what I'm saying.
Go ahead.
So, you start, right. So follow what I'm actually telling you to do. So, like type back here.
Type what? What do you want me to type? Backspace.
Or delete, whatever it's called.
Okay.
Right. See, you can undo that because the cell is still empty. Whereas you couldn't do that if the replacement created a non-empty cell. So that's going to be.
I'm totally confused. What
So it's not a problem with the way that undo works internally.
I'm not talking about undo anymore. I'm talking about the user experience, right? You can cycle through input to equal to double equals to input just by pressing the equal sign, right? But you can't. If at any point that created a non-empty cell, it would stop the cycle, because style key mapping only works when you have an empty cell. And so this new syntax where you replace it with a whole cell that has stuff in it is sort of going to break that idiom,
well, and to be clear, the old version isn't going away, and it would be the preferred version to use for empty cells. So this is only something that's useful when, for some reason, you're populating a cell in some way. In which case, you won't be able to cycle through anymore. You still be able to undo, but you won't be able to cycle.
Won't work unless you've typed nothing into the cell. It's only when you've typed nothing into the cell that triple equals gives you an empty cell again. As soon as you type something into the cell, typing more equal signs does the kind of thing I just did.
Exactly.
So maybe a practical sort of implication is taking the equal bracket case, that if you type in equal, it will convert to Wolfram Alpha short. If you type in bracket, it would convert to an input cell with equal bracket populated. And then if you type backspace, you will still have an input cell.
With a leading equal sign, which is a bit useless.
And I agree. It's maybe slightly weird, but frankly, I'm not really bothered by that.
Let's when you have it built, let's play with it and see what it feels like.
Okay. I'm just
it's a good point.
My concern in
I got it. I finally understood what you're talking about.
Yes.
Okay. All right, let's move on. Item input.
Okay, so this was something I discovered actually when I was composing this agenda. So item and SubItem and SubItem have corresponding styles. item paragraph, sub-item paragraph, sub-item paragraph. And these styles are basically text cells, but text cells that line up with the items. So they don't outdent, they look like they're part of the item kind of going on.
Yes.
We don't have a similar sort of concept for input cells. So if your item has kind of, extra baggage that it wants to accumulate that looks like, that is an input cell, there's no way to do that. It just outdents, like the first example there. And the output also if you evaluate that, all the output
so
is also
you're saying that this here, that the message will not be indented here. Oh, for God's freaking sake, why is it doing this again?
I don't know.
It's been reported already, and they are working on it.
Who's working on it?
Well, people from
Arnaud and Roger or Julie are working on it. And they were supposed to uninstall something tools to see if that was
courseware tools, I think it was.
What did that do? Well, this is a prototype build, but where do I reset this? Where do I reset?
It's in the option inspector. It's not in the preferences right now.
Really should be.
Well, we talked about that too. Yes, you submitted it as a suggestion.
Where is it?
Search for message options, and
you want to be on the
global. Yeah, it'll have to be global. And then, kernel message action is set to print to console. Who knows why? If you just check the X next to it, it will revert itself back to the, default print to notebook, which is what it's supposed to be.
Yeah, which is what it's always supposed to be.
Yeah, and this is something we've been seeing on your system for ages, and we don't know why. It's got to be something you have installed locally, and that's what Arnaud has been trying to run down.
Okay, all right. Anyway,
but in any case, I mean, see the difference in the message cell and the print cell and the output cell as well.
Actually been happening to me too, and I don't know if I've been running some code that's causing it to happen, but I've had the same thing. So
okay, well then go debug it, please. Okay. So I don't understand the point here.
So put a bullet right above that in a 5.
Okay, like this.
And now the input and
now
output
the cell group
doesn't so it doesn't look like it's part. Sometimes you have your items have more information that you want to be part of the items. It's kind of it's kind of a nested outline sort of thing.
Yeah, so it's a multicellular item where the item is the head cell. And what we're saying here is right now the subcells here are not indenting.
Yeah.
Correct.
But why do you want a separate style? Wouldn't that be totally confusing? If you copy that cell somewhere else, it'll do something ridiculous.
Well, so the problem is that what happens after you finish your bulleted list? I mean, so an input cell after your bulleted list could be part of the last bullet, or it could be, the next thing after the bulleted list.
Right. I don't even know how to get it to be the thing after.
So the same problem already happens with text cells. Okay, and the way it's solved and has been solved for many, many years with text cells is a new style was added. And the style is called item paragraph.
Which is what?
Which is the thing that indents as if it's still part of the bullet.
Yes.
And how do I get to it?
It's in the style menu. It's been it's been there since like version 4 or something, maybe 5.
But is there any way that I can get to it? I mean, in other words, if I'm writing bulleted text, so here's a question.
I don't think
there is no keyboard shortcut for it.
Okay,
if that's what you're asking.
I've got a suggestion. Right. One thing that I often want is I'm writing text and I'm basically having one paragraph per cell. Okay.
Yeah.
I have no convenient way to jump to the new cell. Other than I finish, I click, I start a new cell. My question would be, should there be something like a command return or something which...
Well, so there is right now, and you can define a cell style in such a way that when you press enter, it will automatically create a new cell in that style. And I believe that's used in DocuTools authoring.
Well, it's also used in normal text cells. Or
No, it isn't.
No, you can just option enter to create a new cell of the current style. Right, so if you...
Wow. Coolosaurus. Well, that's the thing that's probably been there for 35 years and I didn't know it.
Yeah, yeah.
And item behaves the way John was describing, that enter is just gives you the new cell.
A new item cell.
A new item cell.
So if you just create a new item cell and then type something and press enter, you'll get another item cell.
So in other words, making a multi-line item is not really a thing. A multi-line text cell is a thing. Whoops. Whoops, what the hell happened there? Okay. Oh yeah. That's a little confusing, but I guess that makes sense. But so if I now go option enter, I just get another one of those, which is fine.
Yeah.
I didn't know that option enter did that. Has that been the case since version 1?
I don't know, 1, but 2, I think. Yeah, it's in the insert menu.
Oh God.
It's called cell with same style.
Oh well.
It's like the third item in the insert menu too.
Yeah. Well. So it is. What do you know? Okay. It's a reason for continuing education, so to speak, of all of us and our users.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So what's the question here?
Okay. So if you look in the format style submenu, so you'll see that we have item and item paragraph. That was pre-existing. In this notebook, I actually created a private style sheet which adds item inputs.
Okay.
And so basically that's what I'm suggesting is that we have item input and sub-item input and sub-item input. And in 14, because these things will get a little cluttery, in 14, we're working on a way to aggregate these things into submenus. So maybe we might, push off a bunch of these things into a submenu. Sub-item is just an indented item. So press, type a star and then press tab. That's sub-item. And if you do tab again, it's sub-item.
And you can backspace to get back to the previous level of indent, which is
Yeah.
nice.
Either backspace or shift tab, either one works.
What about the delete now? Delete now isn't working to do anything because that is the base.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, and in fact, I used these styles in the last agenda item. I like this so much. So.
Okay.
Yeah, Itai was also initially a bit confused when I explained this to him, but yes, I think it's something that for people who know that it's there, at least I think it's something that will catch
Here's
on.
the thing I'd like to put into the user assistance meeting. Okay, something that's initially going to sound crazy, which is the fact that I don't know that option return makes a new cell. Right? If you actually watched everything I did in kind of what am I trying to say? You know, everything I did in typing into a notebook,
Mhm.
and you were an AI-ish thing, you could readily say, hey, why aren't you using option whatever? Why are you using this 5 keystroke combo when you could be doing this?
Mhm.
So something I want to discuss in user assistance.
I mean, I have no idea how one would even collect a training set on that sort of data.
I know. I don't think it's a machine learning problem. I think it's not a machine learning problem.
Well, but the point being, I don't think that ChatGPT understands any better than than anything we could even train, because it's just that kind of data just isn't out there. I mean, it would have to be something like an expert writes up,
Yes,
all of the
yes,
tricks.
yes. Right. But I mean, it's like a lot of our other rule-based things. You know what I'm saying? It's a notifier. If you see this key combination, do this.
Yeah.
I think it's worth thinking about. I think that there might be 10 of them that would really improve a bunch of user workflows. See what I'm saying?
Yeah. Okay, this is pretty straightforward. We already have information of notebook objects. I'm just proposing information of cell objects, and you can see basically the list of rules that we have at the moment.
Looks reasonable, except for the fact that this font is too big.
Isn't that the
Well, that's the normal font of a data object, right?
Yeah, but so it's probably not right in this case, because this isn't the normal font of a text cell, is it?
Well, you're also not in a text cell.
I know, and this is not. This doesn't look right. It looks way too big.
Right. Well, yes. Well, I guess that's what happens when people insist on hard coding font sizes.
Okay, so I'm saying, how do we fix that?
I'll take a look at it.
Sorry, who said that? What?
Nick.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, it's probably that it should be using an ambient font size. It's not.
Well, maybe we should take a look at what are the available things. And I mean, we could just sort of stick everything there in the information, but I'm not sure that's necessarily right.
That's a known prototype build issue. It wouldn't show up in a regular nightly build, but it's in the prototype build, and it's on my list to fix.
Right, but
when I do this, does this do something sensible? Yes, it does. It sends that string in there.
Yeah.
Do we get a bunch of these?
Yeah. Get a decent amount.
Would you like them from me? Because I don't send them in.
They're of less practical value on nightly builds because the form doesn't track the provenance of what build it only tracks version number. It doesn't track which build number generated this. So for for builds that are not production builds, it means that we get
a bunch of crap.
Yeah, a bunch of crap because it's something that was a bug and then it went away.
Yep.
Oh, that's not the latest version of the agenda. I wonder what happened there. But can we actually look at the thing I asked to look at, which is not notebook cell data, but actually look at the cell information and think a little bit about what actually goes in information? That's a notebook object.
I'm sorry, what are you saying? Are we looking at this item here, information of cell object?
Yes, and I'm saying look at the next cell, which actually has information, right? the point of this thing is cell object, not notebook object. And so that, right, that is the available information for,
Okay, you're saying.
I'm
this
saying
says
ignore
that-
that.
Yeah, okay. So this is the wrong thing. What was really wanted
No,
was
It's showing, for example, we support information of notebook object right now, but we don't yet support information of cell object. That's
Right.
the proposal, that we begin doing so. And the starting point for what might be in it could be the output of developer backtick cell information.
Sounds reasonable to me. I don't know the details. I leave it
well,
to you.
that's why I'm asking that we look at it, Stephen.
Okay, all right, okay.
So maybe put a / column at the next guy and evaluate that, and we can take a look. I mean, style, obviously.
Well,
You
why don't
know,
we just make this in a form where we can just like see, let's just say data set association.
so
Some
style.
of these names are a bit weird.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you know, these names were done ages and ages ago. I'm not generally attached to most of the names.
What is rendering and needs rendering?
So rendering is you know, I'm not actually 100% certain that's totally relevant. It may be from the PostScript days. I'll have to check to see if it still maps to modern graphics. But
okay,
but it was the notion that a cell is in the process of being drawn, or that, you know, it's not, you know, it needs to be redrawn. That's in principle what it meant. But PostScript had a very kind of specific notion of how to do this, and that might date from those days.
all right. So this just needs some modernization. I mean, cell serial number, we now have cell IDs, right?
That actually is cell ID.
Okay.
Is it? Wait, is sorry, excuse me. No, I'm going to retract that. No, actually, I don't think it is. That might be the
Some
Just
internal.
the creation order in this session.
except 2071 isn't what I would have expected. Okay, so I actually don't remember, and I would have to go look that up. I don't want to waste your time doing that here.
Okay.
So it needs some modernization, basically. Concept seems fine, needs modernization.
Well, then
Content data is a pretty important one, which you might not like the name for, but it is the type of the cell, you know.
Cell type. Don't we have other names for this in other places? This seems uncooked here. This seems like there's more work that can be done. It's not, you know, these names seem kind of cruddy.
and do we, so for example, yes, and there's also the question of, do we want to include all of these things? So for example, is formatted something we want to include? Is cursor position something we want to include?
Yes.
Why
wouldn't we?
Well, it's sort of very time dependent. I mean, right? So evaluate the next example. Right. So, and then if you, right. So if you click around, you get moving different positions. And if you click right above or right below the cell, and
Seems like the right thing to me. I mean, being able to say dynamic of information of evaluation cell seems like a good thing.
Formatted, by the way, is if you toggle the cell expression on the cell.
Yeah. So if you exactly. If you do Shift Command E on the input cell, then
it'll show up as unformatted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so is that something, again, is that something we want to include? Maybe yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So I think, if I'm understanding Itai's sort of meta concern correctly. It's that, information here is maybe returning things that seem a bit more ephemeral than the typical information.
I see.
Yes, exactly. Ephemeral is usually more, summary information, and this is a bit more.
Or like current value.
Yes.
I
and
see.
right, and notice
like...
that and also notice that I had to manually force dynamic updating in order to get this.
I guess it. Dynamic is not automatically paying attention to the fact that cell information could update.
Yeah.
And I bet it shouldn't, because I bet that can lead to some horrifying slowdown somewhere.
Yes, definitely.
Well, so the issue is, should these things be in current value, or should they be in information of cell expression, cell value of information of cell object?
Well, and so generally, if we have kind of a philosophy of what sort of things should be an information of cell object, then I think we can make a bunch of these decisions, ourselves.
So what are you saying?
In other words, guiding principle. If we have a guiding principle of what should be in here, then we don't have to kind of micromanage every single thing, because Lou and I can kind of apply the guiding principles appropriately.
I do tend to think that your point about not putting ephemeral things into information seems sensible to me. But I mean, look, or alternatively said, information is a one and done thing, which if you want to make it dynamic, you have to go to effort like putting the update interval in. And it can pull out things that are ephemeral at the time when it asks for them. If you get what I'm saying.
Okay.
And I think when we don't have the ephemeral stuff, we'll be always arguing, oh, but you could change the style.
So it should be noted, if we look at the information of notebook object, there are a couple of ephemeral fields in there. The memory modification, file modification, modified in memory.
I think there's a slippery slope here. Now, what should be provided as a current value is a different thing. That can certainly overlap with what's in information.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
I would suggest not
redraw bug.
not evaluating.
I was just looking at a pull request for that today, actually. So
yeah, there's a there's a futurized draft page for that. I don't know what happened with Nextcloud. Yeah,
Steven, just resize the notebook or something. And that will fix it up. There you go.
And if this is a prototype build, the inputs in that draft ref page will work.
So this is the history stuff to remind you that the evolution of the notebook history dialog into a system function.
There's a lot of pinking there. There's pinking there for what it's worth.
So yes, there's a data set issue that I need to chat with Itai about, but we don't need to take up space for that in this meeting. But so you've seen this function once before. At the time it was called notebook cell information, and there were a couple of things you didn't like about it, including some of its options. So what's currently in the prototype build is the thing documented here, which resolves the issues that you had with it, namely the name, which you request to be notebook cell data, and the two options which are described at the bottom of the details section there still exist. I don't know if they need to. They might not need to, but they are now method options. Yes.
I don't think we need this. By the way, why on earth is this thing not aligned properly?
So what, not aligned properly?
The icon
plus
on the
sign.
data interval type setting. Yep.
Okay, so one question is whether cell object should have a print form.
Well, it does have a print
It
form.
does. So it does. Okay. I
And
can't imagine we need this. Well, what are these things here? Those are the, why is there a key in this association? Why is it not? Oh, because that's the actual cell.
yes, and if you were to, you know, the unfortunate thing about data set, well, I know you can try clicking on, you know, the cell style. That should be a link, but you may need to copy the cell object out of it because it's a because of data set.
Why isn't this just a list where this is like cell content or something?
Why is what not a list?
Why is this not a data set of a list rather than a data set of a thing with keys, where the keys are the cells? I mean, the cells are in a definite order, right? Why don't you just use the positional information?
This function can take lists of cell objects. It doesn't just point at notebook objects in which, as you say, the cells have a definite order. You can give it lists of cell objects in any order you like.
What happens if I repeat a cell object in that list?
Then it will do
but
something.
But cell objects are unique, right? So it'll drop.
Right, like the association drops things.
Right.
But what I'm asking is, why not just return a list of associations that represent each cell that include, and then when you ask for it for, you know, a collection of cells, you just get a list of results, a list of associations as results.
Rather than a data set.
No, it can be a data set, but it's a data set of a list. I'm just saying, I don't think the key being the cell object is terribly useful. I think it's more useful. What's that?
I don't understand why not. Why you don't think it's useful?
Stephen, are you saying you just want the cell object to be a value and there to be a key that gives that column?
That's what I'm suggesting. That it's a list of essentially, I mean, things that are
all right, whether it's a key or not, I still think it should be the first column.
Sure. I don't disagree about that. But I mean, yes, I think it should be the first column. But to what extent is the cell thing we just looked at, the cell information function, information of cell object, to what extent is that recapitulating?
So the items that are available in cell information will also be available as targets for notebook cell data, as things you can ask for from notebook cell data, as is any current value or any option name.
All right, so there's default here, but now, is there anything in notebook cell data that's not accessible from cell or information of cell object?
Yes, for instance, any current value, font size, for instance. And there are also some custom elements that you can ask for, like cell thumbnail that goes off and does, you know, some new thing, or cell image, which, you know, just rasterizes the thing you're asking for. I mean, notebook cell data allows you to specify lots of things that you might want. You might want the cell expression.
And why does information of cell object not also allow these things?
Well, for one thing, it's because it doesn't exist at the moment. But if you're saying we should just
some of these things are not information about the cell, they're computed things based on the cell.
I see.
Right? Cell image is not, you know, it's not
you're right.
a feature of the cell. It's a processed.
Are we seeing all of the default columns?
No.
So
So I don't know what we're looking at
I
in
don't
the
even
agenda
know how,
notebook here.
why
This
can't
is
we, I'm sorry.
this
in
is a
data set,
resource.
why can't we scroll over in a data set? Why isn't one of those buttons allowing? How do I do it?
Well, it's the data set is wider than the notebook. You scroll the notebook.
Okay,
There's no way to scroll the
pointless.
data set without scrolling the notebook.
Please delete this output. We should not be looking at this output. We should be looking at the draft ref page. This output is from resource a function that is no longer the ground truth for what this function is going to become.
But to respond to Steven's question, yes, sometimes you need the two scrollers to see the whole data set.
So why aren't we putting a scroller in the data set itself?
In order to do that, you have to know how wide, you have to actually prescribe how wide the data set is.
But sometimes even with the scroller in the data set, you still need to move both.
But wait a second, John. You don't need to prescribe. What you're saying is with that scroller, you are changing the left margin in the data set. See what I'm saying? You're just saying that whatever is at the left-hand side isn't the left-hand.
But how wide does the blob that is the screen, you know, the on-screen rectangle that holds the data set, how wide is that? If it's not the full width of the data set, you have to specify a width.
No, it's the width. Okay, look, what's visible on the screen, if I were to get back this thing that I just deleted, okay?
You can just evaluate those two cells, or yeah,
Well,
that works.
If I get this back, right?
Mm-hmm.
What I'm saying is, right now, if I had a scroller within the data set itself, it would just get it to the point where, for example, this is on the left-hand side of the visible sub-window that is the data set.
And what's the rightmost column?
Something
where is the right edge?
The right edge is at the right edge of the notebook. It's cut off as it is right now. It's cut off, but all that's happening is this. Oh, I see.
It's cut off because it scrolls off to the right.
Yeah, okay. So you're saying that this scroller is doing the exact same thing. I thought that scroller might scroll the whole notebook. It does, but it only scrolls things which are cut off to the right.
Exactly.
That seems like the right behavior. Jose, did you still have a different thing to say on that?
I've seen cases, and I think this has been reported, that there is a scroller in the data set and another one in the notebook. And the users wanted that to see the data set with the scroller in the data set. And you have to use the one in the notebook.
Well,
to see the whole data set.
I don't know what basis the dataset code uses for deciding whether to have an internal scroller, but the front end doesn't care anything about dataset. The front end has a thing of a certain width, and if that width is wider than the window, it's going to scroll it.
Mm-hmm.
Guys, I really need to take off here. Do we still have to look over this?
Well, I mean, how much review does notebook cell data need to go into 14 as a you know, at least as an experimental?
Get it in there, and let's look at it one more time. Okay.
And
Well,
did we
I mean,
decide
think,
that? Go on, you.
I mean, I think Stephen did raise the interesting question of what is the relationship between notebook cell data and information of cell.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in principle, since we're at, I mean, I suppose, well, I'm not sure what all the keys are, because I've not memorized this documentation.
But there is an item, a line, the second detail there says anything from cell information you can get to with notebook cell data. Whether the opposite, whether that needs to be true in cell information, I don't
well,
think it does.
Is it ever the case that information can give you things that don't exist in the kind of single argument form of information? So, you know, you do information of an object, and then you do information of an object, comma, key. Is there ever a key that wasn't shown in the initial view?
Yeah, for entities it is. You can ask for information of France and it will give you a summary, but you can ask for any property that's an entity value and it'll return it.
Okay. And do we consider that a good design?
Could you repeat what you just said?
That's
So-
debatable.
Yeah, if you do entity value of entity country France, you will get, or I'm sorry, information of entity country France, you will get a set of summary properties giving you basic information about
Yes,
France.
I
But you
know.
could ask for a property that's in entity value, which is not in the information list itself, and we will still fetch it for you. That's done as a convenience so
Yeah, I
that we
understand.
don't say, oh, we have the information about France's population. We're just not going to give it to you because you asked information instead of entity value.
It's a little bit weird, but I think it's
Yeah.
okay.
Right. And so then the question is, do we need, right. So then John is raising the point of if we settle on just having information of cell object, then well, I suppose the reason we need the cell information data is that it accepts things other than just a single cell object or even a list of cell objects, right? You can give it a notebook. I know, can you give it like a selection or other fancy things?
No, just a notebook object or cell objects
Right.
currently.
Yeah, so I guess the reason we want the cell information data is that you know, it can also understand notebook objects, and then we can you know, then it can do the right thing. So, you know, maybe John and I should just take another look at exactly what we want out of information and this, and you know, we can sign off at the next meeting, hopefully.
Fine.
Okay.
Okay. Last item about encode string. I like transcode. I think
Okay.
transcode is quite good. The only question is should it be string transcode or transcode string? Because it both takes in a string and gives out a string.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of slightly prefer transcode string, but is that consistent?
Okay, so I didn't realize that video did it in the opposite order. That may be a good reason to go that way.
I'm not sure that it is.
Okay.
Wait a minute. Why? Oh, there we go. Yeah. Beautiful. Look at how magnificent this fuzzy completion stuff is. Huh. Magnificent.
Right, but yeah, for other things like, you know, for other things, actually, no, I do like transcode string better because, well, no, like
I
we
like
do,
it.
we have
I like
basic
it much
code.
better, but I can't articulate why.
Yeah, I also like it much better.
Right, so we have like base encode, base decode, which sort of suggests it should be string transcode.
I mean, we have pure transliterate.
That's true.
I think transcode string is the right thing. I think
Okay.
transcode on its own is too weird.
Mm-hmm. Right, there's a little bit of, you know, this weirdness in I'm having a bit of trouble coming up with a usage message, but maybe John and I can work on that offline and
Be happy to do so.
Transcode string of that thing there transcodes from Unicode to UTF-8. Is that correct?
Well, I mean, it transcodes from the kind of, you know, native encoding of strings. I hesitate to refer to that as Unicode, but
Okay, I think that's very reasonable. Transcode string to UTF-8 sounds very reasonable to me.
Okay.
All right, let's wrap it up. Thanks a lot, guys. See you all soon.
okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.